Hello, Africa. You're listening to 1000 African Voices, broadcasting from an African perspective. Welcome to another episode where we profile Africans of diverse cultures who have traveled and lived across Africa and the world. 1000 African Voices is a program aimed at breaking down the boundaries that divide us as a people, the boundaries that divide our beautiful continent. I'm your host, Aburengwi C, coming to you from our Johannesburg studios. You can also find the show on iTunes by searching for 1000 African Voices and clicking the subscribe button to make sure that the next episode is delivered straight to your phone. Our Instagram account is Kungana, and lastly, you can follow us on Twitter at Kungana1000 to join the conversation. 1000 African Voices Kungana Project is an initiative by the Africa and Me organization. Kungana is a Kiswahili word that means coming together. In this series, we will collect and share stories from all parts of Africa, stories from our sisters in Ghana, our brothers in Nigeria, our uncles in Namibia and the Democratic Republic of Congo, from Malawi to Cameroon, Ethiopia to Libya, Cairo to Harare. 1000 African Voices, creating a borderless Africa. Today we're joined by a very special guest here on 1000 African Voices who will shortly introduce herself. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Oh, doing really well. Welcome to 1000 African Voices. I cannot tell you how excited I am to finally get a chance to understand the person that you are. If you don't mind just introducing yourself to the listeners of 1000 African Voices, who is Ntsiki Mazwai?
Oh my gosh, first of all, Ntsiki Mazwai hates that question. I don't know if anybody can answer who they are because I think that we're all on a journey of self-discovery. So the only things I know so far about myself is that I'm very creative and very expressive. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that's what I am. I'm an artist who talks a lot and has a lot to say and feels deeply and the unity of Africans and getting everything of ours that is ours back.
Why do you think you have a lot to say? I mean, what is behind that? What drives that?
Because being born black is actually being born into a political struggle. So, and especially as a black woman, I don't think I choose to be vocal or opinionated. I think that circumstances in Africa, in South Africa, lead me to be the person I am. Because it's not fair that as a woman, I don't get treated equally as a man, despite the fact that I might be smarter or more skilled at the job or, I already get boxed into a sex object who is a homemaker. They're these boxes that I'm put in and I'm like, no, but my soul didn't choose that. I want to be whoever I want to be. So, yeah, I think that's the struggle. It's just about you get born into the black experience and then you realize that, no, actually, I don't want to be a maid or a gardener. I've got different dreams for myself. So I just think that's what the conflict is. It's this conflict of my own soul with the reality of where I'm living.
And at what point did you decide that you were going to say something? Because I think we all have something to say, but not all of us have the courage to stand up and say it. At what point in your life did you decide that you wanted to be as vocal as you have become?
And it's so strange because I didn't decide anything. All my life, that's what people have been saying to me. That's the message I've been getting. They're like, yo, you know how to speak for yourself, ne? And I've always wondered what they're saying, even in primary school. I mean, I remember in primary school, my main issue was how my name was pronounced by white people. I had a really, really deep issue with that. And I was like, you're not even trying. And when you say my name like that, it loses its meaning. And you need to speak my meaning into me when you speak to me. So I remember even in being in grade 2 or in grade 3 and being like, no, that's not my name. My name is Ntsiki. Siki doesn't mean anything to me or whatever. I get frustrated at like the basics. So I don't think that I chose or was like, because a lot of times also I realize afterwards that I've created a lot of trouble. I'm like, geez.
Maybe it's worth going back in time to understand the person that you are. And I know earlier you said you are still evolving, but where were you born? And maybe when were you born and how did you grow up? Just some of the early memories that you have of yourself as a child.
Okay, I was born in Soweto, in a suburb called Pimville. My parents were writers, so there were lots of books in the house. We always had a study that was filled with books. So for entertainment, it was just like the go-to thing to do, to go look in the library and read. And then I think we were also quite protected because I remember that the neighborhood kids, we never went to their houses. Everybody always came to our house. So my mom's house was more like the heartbeat of the neighborhood or for my friends. And then my mom was a very conscious woman, very conscious, very strong, very opinionated, a Virgo like myself. So a lot of people say that's where I get my spirit from. I wasn't allowed to put chemicals in my hair when I was young because my mom was like, hell no, you're an African. So I did have a Pan-Africanist and Black conscious upbringing. My parents were in the Pan-Africanist Congress. There were leaders in there. So there were all these secret comrade meetings in my home. My mom was also a teacher, and she got expelled from teaching at a Catholic school because the students started saying all these political things after her class. But she has a legacy there at the school. She's known as the woman that did away with Afrikaans.
Wow.
Yeah, right? That's quite something.
That is something.
Yeah, my mom was kind of a big deal, I must say.
Maybe just for the rest of our listeners across Africa, what was your mother's name? Because after this, I think people will want to just understand her a bit more.
And it's so sad. It's such a tragic story. Okay, but her name is Ntsiki Mazwai. Belete, Belede. When people Google, they'll actually find my older sister Tandiswa's album called Belete, which she released recently. My mother died when we were young. She died in 92. I was born in 1980. So I lost my mom when I was 12. And that was like before the internet and before information could pass. So a lot of her is word of mouth, but it's a beautiful legacy. It really is a beautiful legacy. And people who have met her or come into contact with her continue to speak of her. She was really, really an incredible woman. I also have sisters, 2 sisters, which South Africa has grown to know. So a lot of us is actually my mother. We've got this great poet in South Africa, Don Matera. And Don Matera always says that my mother would have been the first female president of this country.
Wow.
So South Africa lost out on a president.
Wow. So you only really had 12 years of your life with your mother. But it sounds like the values that she instilled, even though you were 12, are the values that you still carry with you today.
Completely.
Where did you go to school? I mean, which schools did you attend where your name was being mispronounced?
I mean, why did they take me to these schools? Okay, first, my first grade was actually in the hood, not far from where I live. And me and my sisters have actually built a library. Well, not built, but created a library there and kind of make sure that it's working. So that was my first grade. And then I went to the white schools. I went to St. Catherine's in Parktown, a girls' school, a girls' private school. So that is where like it started getting real for me when I was 8 years old. And being the one or two black faces. And it's so funny because they always pride themselves in individual attention, these schools, but I don't feel like the black people got individual attention. I feel like had I been white, I would have achieved a lot more and been a lot more in my schooling career because I've never really changed. So you can't not be brilliant at school and then suddenly be brilliant after school. I don't know. I don't believe in that. I believe that you are what you are.
Yeah.
So I just don't believe these schools give individual attention. Then I went to St. Andrews in Bedfordview, which for me was also a similar experience of that subtle white racism where even if you're a brilliant black child, you're not celebrated as a brilliant black child. So I went to these schools. Oh, then I had 2 years in Queenstown. Queenstown is a small town in the Eastern Cape. So I was a city girl that went to a small town, and the girls showed me flames.
How so? I mean, what are some of the memories of
Wow,
them showing you flames?
they were like, we're gonna put you back in your place, madam. You think you're all that? You're coming here from Joburg, hey? Joburg! Oh, wow! So like, I ran back to Joburg with my tail between my legs from the Eastern Cape. But it's funny because when I became famous, now the same girls are like coming on my Facebook going, "Oh, do you remember me?" And I'm like, "No, no, 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 not at all." Yeah, that would traumatize me a bit. But yeah, it's the typical white schooling. And then in university, that's when I realized that I was black.
Only at university you realized that you were black?
University, I realized I was black because
What happened?
put you in a bubble, right? But once you get to university, everybody from all walks of life is on that campus. So that's when you realize that, oh, okay, now I'm definitely only hanging out with blacks. Because when you're in the other schools, it's kind of more mixed. The bubble's more mixed. Well, there's a perception, right? But
Yes.
at university, it's more real, where the whites are together, the Indians are together, the blacks are together, and some of the privileges of private schooling are taken away. And then there's other dynamics you must deal with now, and now the black experience. So I think that's when I started waking up, and then I started listening to more hip hop, started listening to like The Roots, Dead Prez, Talib Kweli, Mos Def, and all these like underground conscious rappers then. And then I could understand the messaging, and I was like, yeah, man. Especially the Dead Prez album, Let's Get Free. And I was just like, yeah, man, something's not right here. So, yeah, that's when I started kind of waking up.
Where did you complete your tertiary education? What did you study, and what was the reason for making that choice?
Okay, geez. Okay, so my first attempt at first year was at Wits University, where my parents made me do information systems, despite the fact that I came out of matric with a B in drama, and I was like, no, but this is I wanna be an artist. I could just tell that I was more creative, and I was like, no, I'm not really into computers. And they were like, no, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. So then I went to Wits and did the information systems. I was bored out of my mind for like the first 2 weeks. Then I was on the lawns for the rest of the year.
When you say on the lawns, you mean what?
I mean, laying on the lawns, listening to music, just chilling out with people between their lectures.
And what came out of that experience and being on the lawns all the
I
time?
got excluded. I failed. That's what came out of that experience. I failed. Okay. So that was when I did BCom Information Systems. Then, because they still want me to be serious, then I was like, okay, let's try advertising or something. Then they're like, no, marketing is more corporate. Yeah, you'll get. So, okay, I do the marketing thing. But then during the marketing thing, that's when I found the arts and my beadwork, and then I detoured. But I did graduate marketing eventually. And funny enough, I graduated at the exact same time when there was a scandal around. I did a rape campaign where I posed naked to say that even if a woman is naked, it does not mean she's asking to be raped. And then there was a whole huge controversy and drama, and oh my God, what? Just like came down. But then at the same time, I was graduating, doing the marketing thing. Then I did my art thing for a while. And then about 2 years ago, I got accepted to do my master's in the arts because of the work I've already done in the industry. So got accepted to do my master's at Rhodes University, and then I got that degree and I got it cum laude.
Wow. See, what was your thesis on? What
My
did you?
my my thesis actually was a childhood memoir. That's why these questions are so like easy for me. Like I'm like, oh gosh, I know my story now. I sat on it for a whole year. It was very interesting because I got accepted because of my poetry. But when I got into the classes, my spirit was just determined. It just said, no, I'm doing prose. And like all the supervisors are like, no, but what, you're a poet, how are you going to do that? Prose is very difficult. Da, da, da. And I was like, I just need to write my story. I'm here to write my story. And then like, so I did that. And I'm obviously when you've put yourself under so much pressure, you work 100 times more. So I just blocked myself from everybody. I lived in a res that's quite far from everything. I closed my room and I was just in myself and doing the thesis and getting into my demons, going into my childhood. And then I'd submit and they'd be like, no, this is not deep enough. You need to go deeper. Then I'd be in front of my laptop crying and saying, I'm going to do this. This is so, but I'm doing it. You know? So it was a crazy, crazy, crazy journey. So it was quite fulfilling at the end to have that. But now the only problem is that it's sitting in my laptop because if I publish that, my family is just going to fall apart properly now. So just sitting on. I don't know when it will be published because it's quite personal and yeah.
Why the masters? You do so many things, and I'm sure there was some level of impact on the work that you do to earn a living. Why did you feel the need to go write the thesis?
Oh my God! First of all, if there's one thing I regret, it's the level of brokenness that came after. After school. Wow. Woo! I had to like mind trick myself into like, okay, girl, you're broke now. Cool. It is what it is. You know, like that was hard because I literally took, well, more than a year out my office. So if someone can just imagine owning a business and then closing shop for over 12 months, and then now you got to come back and everything around you has evolved. I remember when I came back last year, beginning of the year, I looked around me and everybody had evolved. I was like, oh my God, everybody's on HD. I'm still on analog. So it got so real for me. It really, then I had to now like get back into myself and try to remember who I was and what's my art about and what do I want to do with this master's now and what have I learned and where am I going? So last year was very, 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 very hard for me. And now I'm so happy that I finally worked on that album and I'm ready to release everything that I've been going through.
Are there any ties or links between your thesis and the upcoming album? Maybe you can talk to us a bit about the album that you have been working on. What's the name? What's the release date? And is there a link between your thesis and the album?
Absolutely. After I got my master's, my people started calling me Master Ntsiki, and I love it so much.
Ah.
So like so then obviously when I did the album I was like, okay, flip, what is Master Ntsiki gonna say? And then it was like, oh shit, Master Ntsiki's actually found her peace. I really like have dug up all my demons, all my sadness. I've looked at it in the eye, I've written about it, I've talked to it, like everything that carried my pain, I've stripped it of its power over me. And that's what this album is about. It's about me living my life according to me now, and not the demons or the fears or the hurts that were holding me back. So yeah. So anyway, that's the emotional side of the masterpiece. It's being released on Freedom Day in South Africa. So that's the 27th of April. Obviously, it's for my country. I'm very politically conscious, so people must expect political messaging in my work. I think that this album is important because it's going to encourage dialogue and conversation, especially amongst Africans, and what it means to be us, and where are we, and who do we want to be, and breaking down things like xenophobia, things like, I know there's, in one of my poems, I say, you must teach the children that the Holy Trinity is the Mother, the Father, and the children. So I try to go back to our values as Africans, and I try to celebrate our Blackness and look at the ghetto in a different way. I look at politics, and about how, my other line, I say something about the situation's still the same. The only thing that's changed is the color of people's complexions. So I no longer have a white slave master. The people who are my slave masters have got the same complexion as me. So I cover a lot of like, wow, what the hell was going on, Africans? And then obviously I'm a girl. So I always have issues that are connected to the heart, and boys, and beef with other girls.
Yeah, I must say, preparing for the episode, I listened to a lot of your music, and it moved me from, at some point I'm crying, at some point I'm ululating with your African skies, and it's quite difficult to pin down what you do. So when I asked earlier who you are, I wasn't realistically expecting a one sentence answer, because there's so much fullness in the work that you do. You're listening to 1000 African Voices with Aburengwi C. Our Instagram account is Kungana. That's KWNGANA. And on Twitter, we are at Kungana1000. The show is also available on iTunes, where you can subscribe to get the latest episodes. 1000 African Voices Kuungana Project is an initiative of the Africa and Me group. Kuungana is a Kiswahili word that means coming together. This is a program that profiles Africans of diverse cultures. You've got a blog that is very popular but equally controversial. Why the blog, and do you go after controversy? I mean, do you actively seek that out, or are you just expressing your opinions and people take them as controversy?
That's exactly what happens. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'll wake up and I'll be pissed off about something, and I'm like, this is how I feel right now, and it's upsetting me, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then I'm just as surprised as everybody else when all the drama happens around what I'm saying, because I'm like, oh my God, okay. So now, wow. But at the same time, I'm also like, no, but guys, we got to talk about this stuff. For me, the human experience is about evolving and getting better at being human. So if we're not talking about our issues, then we're not getting better. So for me, I can't even think of having children right now, because I'm like, your mentality is a mess. First of all, I don't want to raise a girl child in this society you've created where now she must wear long clothes because the men can't control themselves. So I just feel like there's a lot of things that need to be talked about and sorted out before we can be like bringing children into this world. We need to address ourselves.
And when there is controversy following something you publish, does it affect you? How do you handle that?
I mean, I've had to learn now because I definitely realize that it does and would have a spiritual impact on somebody to have to fight off so much negative energy. When I see that there's drama, I back away from my social networks. So I just put my phone over there. And then I just like let it die down and I like let people talk about it amongst themselves. Before I used to get caught up and but now I realize that just takes away from me and takes away from my energy. So now I just put the issue on the table and I run out the room.
When did you learn the beadwork stuff? Is it something you grew up doing or is
It's
it something
incredible.
you picked up?
You know what? The one thing about Africans is that we don't want to own up to our black magic, right? I kind of feel like I'm a little witch living amongst other little witches, and none of us are talking about the fact that we've got these superpowers, right? So it's really, I would just wish we'd all embrace our blackness and talk about these things and talk about how the herbs work for us, because they actually are much better for us. So the beadwork, literally, I was walking down the road and I was bored. I saw beads. I bought beads. I went home. I started beading. And then I just got addicted. And then it just became something. It just became what it is. And it grew and grew and grew. It's just crazy. It's crazy. And it's so funny because even people around me and family treat it in a sacred manner. So when I'm sitting and beading, people even start whispering. It's just like there's a relationship that we have with spiritual energy that we know about, but we haven't put it on the pedestal that it deserves.
How does someone move from just walking down the street to start beading and take that all the way to, I believe you're an award-winning bead artist. I don't know what the exact name is.
I know, right? That's why I'm saying that, because my journey, it's not like I plan it. I believe that they work through me. So a lot of the things, it's also just as surprising for me. And I'm like, oh, flip, how do even the opinionated thing, I almost feel like, okay, that's a superpower that I stumbled on. Okay, how does it work? Because it's like a big gun that I need to learn how it works, right? So a lot of my journey is that I just stumble into the gift and then I have to figure out how it works, because I can see that it impacts more than just me. And I can see that when somebody else talks, it's not as powerful. So how do I make this work so that Black people are free? Because I can see that they're using other agents so that the system continues the way it is, where it exploits Black people. And they're using celebrity faces and they're using distraction methods. So for me, the only way to counter that is I know that I've got a powerful medium in my voice, and I can counter that by being deliberately African and deliberately anti-system. And that way I'll affect the way people think. And once I've affected the way people think, then the doing is going to start happening. People are going to start doing things differently. I even noticed now in December, I remember all these years people have been going on about the January blues, oh, I'm broke in January. But now I'm realizing nobody's broke right now, because Black people suddenly got to a point mentally where they're like, oh, okay, in December you work the money like this, right? So it is just about getting to how people think, and then they'll start changing their behaviors.
It must be then frustrating for you as someone observing the Black lives, just watching people do some of the things that may be foreign or things that came from other places. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that your mother was a teacher at a Catholic school. Did you yourself grow up Catholic?
No, I didn't grow up Catholic. We grew up doing traditional rituals, amasiko. So we'd slaughter to celebrate whatever, So we were I've come from a traditional African family. However, we were tied with the Anglican Church because of the anti-apartheid work my parents were doing. So St. Paul's in White City is known in South African history for the anti-apartheid activism and social work that they did. So I grew up under that, but not necessarily under Jesus. And my mother didn't say like Jesus. Sometimes my mother would just take us to church and then go back home and sleep and then come pick us up. So, however, I understand that Africans are custodians of spirituality, and therefore they've got this energy that they need to direct somewhere. I just wish that we were okay with directing it to the ways that we used to. With our form of church was music, and we would have imikiti and traditional affairs to celebrate the seasons. We're into nature. So I just wish that instead of filling up church buildings and showing off our big cars and our nice dresses, we just be ourselves and dance and make it rain and and love nature and be one with nature. So yeah.
I really like what you just said now. You wish you could just dance and make it rain. I've wondered for a long time the process that a poet goes through in formulating a poem. How does that work? Do you wake up with an idea, or is it a thing that you build over time and then you know when you're ready? What goes through the mind of a poet?
I think it happens differently every time, because all my pieces just come when it's their time. And when it's a poem's time, because it's sitting, you can hear your own voice in your head shouting the poem at you. So you don't really have a choice but to get a piece of paper and pen and just put this thing down, and then the voice moves on and your life continues. So you actually do hear, I don't know if you heard on my SoundCloud, there's a piece called The Mighty Have Fallen.
Oh, yes.
And the Mighty Have, yes, right? Yeah. The Mighty Have Fallen, this incredible story behind it. I was sleeping, dead sleep. It's 3 a.m. and I woke up because I can hear something in my head. And I'm like, what? And then I woke up and then I did voice notes. Oh, no. First I get a pen and paper and I write down the poem that I'm hearing in my head. I write. Then I get a phone, I do voice notes, and I'm like, now that the mighty have fallen. Then I layer all the voices. Then I WhatsApp my producer. He was in Gambia. And I'm like, hi, are you awake? Funny enough, he's awake. And I was like, oh my God, this just came through. And I send it as voice notes. So I send him the verses and I send him the choruses that I've done. Do you know, he did that song, that side. I went back to bed. When I woke up in the morning, he had sent the song.
Wow.
Wow.
Just like that. I mean, I'm looking at I don't know if you call them lyrics or the actual poem. Now that the mighty have fallen, who's going to watch over us, preach over us, take over us, took our land? Anyway, I'll get carried away.
Right, because everybody's preaching for the Africans. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so these are the messages which I feel are important that we need to talk about, because one day, 500 years from now, our children's children are going to look back on us, and they need to have a story as to what happened in this era and why are they where they are. And the only way they're going to find that out is through our work and through our written stuff and through our arts, to be like, okay, actually the situation was like this.
I mean, given our history, and the work that you've done, where do you think, in your opinion, the continent is failing, and what are some of the successes that need to be celebrated and highlighted a bit more?
Africans are an incredible people. We're incredibly resilient and incredibly resourceful and incredibly creative. So if we just capitalize on that and make it work for us, because we keep giving away all our everything that's ours, we give it away. We've got amazing systems. In our villages, we had systems that are communal, what was used to be called Ubuntu. So nobody was ever left behind. And that is a beautiful way to live, because it keeps us pure and godly. In this state where we are right now, people get left behind. If you're not that special black that was chosen by the whites, you leave a whole lot of people behind you. I was thinking about it the other day. I mean, private schools are like the best form of education. And if they're only churning out 100 black matriculants of excellence every year, compared to the millions that we're living amongst, that's not enough. We're leaving too many people behind. So in our culture, the way things are run, that would have never happened. Nobody goes hungry. You know, we take care of each other. So I just wish that we were conscious of the fact that our systems are actually superior to the capitalist system. I think that we need to communicate more between the countries. I think that especially South Africans, we're too ignorant of what's happening in the rest of the continent. I don't even know presidents' names. And I know that I know more than other South Africans. So that's quite scary if someone who is educated does not know African presidents. So I just think that we need to learn more about ourselves. We need to get rid of the boundaries that were created by the scramble for Africa. We really need to conscientize ourselves and realize that really these boundaries were created somewhere else and they don't exist. They are imaginary, because when you take an African from any continent, you put them in Soweto, you can't tell that African's from anywhere else but Soweto. It scares me. Xenophobia scares me because it shows me the level of toxic brainwash where you get divided from your own brother and in the end you even hate your brother. That's really sad. So yeah, we've got a lot of work to do. And I just wish also other Africans would be more cocky in dealing with South Africa, because South Africa is very arrogant and also very ignorant. So, right? So, yeah, I just need African voices to just come to the party and be coming with the facts and the intellectual side, because that's where our intellectual capacity is. It's not in South Africa.
The only thing more painful than the boundaries that were put in place in what you mentioned, or you called the scramble for Africa in 1884, 85, the only thing more painful than that is the fact that we continue to defend those boundaries.
It's tragic.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. Ntsiki, maybe as we start wrapping up, where do you live now? And how would you describe your city to some of the listeners that have never been there?
So now I am in Soweto. And I think Soweto should actually be an independent town in South Africa. There's like over 5 million people. It's classified as a township. But I have a problem with that word. I have a problem with all these derogatory terms we use when we describe where black people live. I don't know, I still think part of my journey is deracializing these things that people call the townships, because it's no different from what's happening in Sandton. People are just living. So there's no way that we can think that one form of human life is any different. Anyways, that's a story for another day. But Soweto, very vibrant, very typical African community, very loving, very jolly, very energetic, very fast-paced. Wow, there's a lot going on here. It's actually what inspired my album now. So I think, the masterpiece is going to tell you what Soweto is like. But if you're ever in South Africa, the first stop is Soweto.
Okay, no, well said. We're really looking forward to the release of the album, which is on what date can our listeners look forward to downloading and purchasing the masterpiece?
The 27th of April.
27th of April. From all the work that you've written down, the poems, the songs, do you have a favorite one that you sort of your go-to poem or song that you play or recite?
I have played songs at different times. Because you said, exactly like how you said, I'm very schizophrenic. So it depends what mood I'm in.
Okay, I suppose for 1,000 African voices, okay, the mood that I'm in as will be accompanied by African skies. Yuli Lady,
Oh,
smiling and smiling. What beautiful lyrics, by the way.
oh, beautiful. Wow.
And,
Oh, I'm so privileged. Thanks so much for having me.
oh no, the pleasure is all ours. Any last words for our listeners? What are some of the things that Master Ntsiki Mazwai still wants to achieve?
Oh, I want to have a school, but only in my 60s. Right now, I just want to perform and perform and perform and travel Africa and just party with Africans. I just want to party with Africans for the next 10 years. So if like all the gig organizers, whatever, please book me and my band. I just want to party in Africa. That's all I want to do with my life.
Okay. Now I'm sure you will enjoy Africa because we do have the best continent.
That's the thing. We're so full of joy and love because there's this Izangoma. Isangoma is a traditional healer, right? And the word Isangoma actually comes from Ngoma, which is song. So as Africans, our spirituality is in song. That's what I mean when I say I want to party in Africa. I just want to come and create a sacred experience all over this place because that's who we are. We don't need to be like in suits and in weaves. That's not who we are. Yeah, anyways, I'm getting carried away.
I'm also tempted to ask about the weaves if you have any views.
Of course, I know it's a complete disaster. Black girls should not be wearing other people's hair. It's as simple as that. You don't find white people putting on afros. It's disgusting. It's just like, wow, guys, let's just love ourselves a little bit more, So, and I just don't think it's just women only. I think it's a sickness that affects men and women because men are going for girls with weaves because they've got a fixation with white hair, and that's sad. I don't want to have a man who's fixated with having white people's hair. Come on. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll think it's straightforward, it's very obvious, but obviously, because of what we see out there, our own practices, it's obviously not as straightforward as you say or as one would think it was or wish it was.
You know what? We have been brainwashed a lot, and we need to start owning up to that. We need to start owning up to the fact that we don't really own media spaces, and the media spaces have been controlled by a certain one race, and they've been celebrating their own culture. They've been celebrating the beauty of their own women. Our women don't look like that. That's not what we celebrate as beauty, So let's start creating platforms that have women that look like us as labeled as beautiful.
Yeah, and you walk around the streets with pride.
Yeah, that's hectic.
Yeah, as you said, it's probably enough to talk about there for another episode of 1,000 African Voices, where we attempt to break down the boundaries that divide our people. So Master Ntsiki Mazwai, Mamia, Street Queen, the Ntsiki-nator, it's been an absolute pleasure listening to what you have to say. Before this episode, I struggled to categorize you as one thing. After the episode, I'm no wiser than I was before the episode started. I think that is a compliment of the sophisticated person that you are. So thank you very much for agreeing to be part of our Kungana Africa, 1,000 African Voices. Thank you.
Bless you, Ndabulela.
You've been listening to 1,000 African Voices, brought to you by the Africa and Me organization. Please join us next time as we bring you yet another African voice. I'm your host, Awurengwi C. Our sound engineer is Bandile Lukele. Our Instagram account is Kungana, and we are at Kungana1000 on Twitter. For more information, including the contact details of our guests, please visit us on our website www.1000africanvoices.com. You can also subscribe to our show on iTunes by typing 1000 African Voices. Until next time, Kungana Africa, and take care.
Connecting Africa.